All right, Lee, week 4. Today we're going to talk about managing difficult projects successfully. So I'm sure over your time you have been in some tough spots and seen a lot of people having difficult projects. Like, when you hear that, what are some of the big things that are super important to managing oneself out of a difficult project?
Well, that's a pretty decent question. I'm going to have to answer this from a hypothetical position because I've really never had a difficult project.
All right.
Sure. This is a hot topic right now. This whole troubled projects. I mean, there's so many people out there that say, "Well, I'll tell you how to fix a troubled project." And well, part of the key to that is what I found, at least when I was called in to save it, to be the fireman, to put the fire out and make sure things got done. What I found was that the planning was so pathetic that they didn't even know they were getting off track until it was too late. So I think the key to recovering those projects is to revisit the original plan that was developed, to find those areas where it was unrealistic. You got to remember that the pressure on project managers is so intense that they have a tendency to modify the planning to meet the expectation of the date that they're going to deliver, and start doing the project knowing in advance that their plan really isn't adequate, and they keep dogging it until they do what we call optimistic statusing, that, oh yeah, we're on track, and then 80% in they go, well, actually we never were on track. So we have to focus some attention on the value of the plan. How stable is the plan? And that's something that we have to pay attention to. And so when
Makes
I look back,
total sense. So go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so when you're called in to be that fireman, and theoretically or in practicality, how difficult, or what are some of the apprehensions? A lot of times it's just they move the guy out and they put the guy in. But what are some of the apprehensions or difficulties that one might face when dealing with the team to say, I mean, some of them might be relieved to say, well, finally, someone can acknowledge that we are way behind and do all these things. But what's it like, kind of like picking up the mess that often exists with teams and just the structure, in a sense?
Well, that's really the challenge. I like the way you put it, picking up the mess, because that's what happens. And just simply replacing the project manager doesn't necessarily fix the problem. So when I would go into those kind of troubled situations, I'd spend a lot of time initially basically talking to the project team, the people that were being responsible for the delivery of those products, whatever those may have been. And what I found out, and I found this to be true in project management everywhere I go, is that the truth lies down with the worker bees. They know what's really going on. They know what the problems are, but the higher level management sugarcoats it, presents a story to management that they'll be acceptable of. And in the meantime, the people down at the working level are going, what in the world is this guy saying? I mean, we know we don't have enough people. We know we've got testing that's not been planned. And so all of a sudden you find out that the truth was there all the time, but nobody bothered to ask them because they didn't like the answer they got. So you have to go into it with a very open mind, not looking for the guilty. That's not the purpose, but
Yes,
with
sir.
an open mind to find out from the workers, where are the real issues? What are the things that we need to pay attention to immediately to sort of stop the bleeding? And that's the way I did that on a couple of projects that were like a couple hundred million. I mean, almost as much as I make in a year, and hundreds of subcontractors, and so when we started talking it out, you find out real quickly where the problems are, and then you can focus your attention on what you're going to do to try to resolve those problems.
And I imagine a lot of those situations, it takes an artful project manager to be able to negotiate with what the reality is, form a team, get the actual good plan going, and then communicate up to management, who I guess may have preconceived notions that we are somewhere or we're somewhere. And now, how do you work? How do you, while you're doing this, how are you handling the conversation with the sponsor, executive management, etc.?
Well, if you ever play, I don't know if you're a bridge player, but I used to play a lot of bridge for money.
All
And
right.
One of the things you learn in bridge that you have to be good at is finesse. You got to be able to finesse so that people think something that may in fact not be true, and until it actually happens. So you finesse the idea. Well, that's what I do with the senior level people. You can't just hit them between the eyes with the bad news. You got to
Yeah.
finesse it. Hey, we're going to be able to make this. We're going to fix it. We're going to do it over. And if I can get into a project with 25 to 30% of the time left on the project, normally I can pull that out. Normally I can find what it's going to take to do that. Now I don't do the work. Are you crazy? I don't do the work. But I know who to get to do the work.
Yeah.
And that's been a custom. We had that happen in Indianapolis when we were supposed to deliver a project in 3 years, and then all of a sudden management said, no, can't be 3 years, got to be a year and a half. And
Yeah.
so I had to go in there and start to talk to all the people that were responsible for delivering in 3 years and finesse them to think that it was doable in a year and a half. And so it wasn't that long. I mean, I should have gone into religion because I can convert people in a heartbeat. It's unbelievable. I could have been the best
It's not
pastor
too
in the
late,
world.
Lee. It's not too
I
late.
know
I'll go
it's
with
too
you.
late now. It's too late now, but
Okay.
that's what you got to do. You got to convert those negative attitudes into positive attitudes that look at it in a way that, hey, not only can we do this, we can do it better and faster than anybody else. And once that takes hold, the actual work becomes a little bit more simplified. We delivered that project in a year and a half, and it saved the company. And right now it's the leading market leader in the world for that particular type of a medical diagnostic piece of equipment. And it was all done because somebody said it couldn't be done. And that was it. One half year, 6 months in, they started saying, we can't make it. We can't make it.
Yeah.
And so that's when I got involved, and we made it. And I was just subcontract. I was the only non Roche guy on the project, and so I had a lot of freedom. They gave me a lot of opportunity, but I didn't have to get rid of people. All of those people stepped in and saw where it had to be done at the right time and delivered. No, not a big thing.
Yeah. This is a personal question. Do you prefer, I mean, no one wants to be in the fight maybe all the time, but do you prefer to be in those spots where someone has, like, the chips are down, you have to bounce it back up, and you get the flexibility to finesse more? Or do you prefer to lead it from the beginning
Oh
personally?
yeah, no, well, I kind of like problem solving. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't mind picking up a job that's in a mess, and seeing if I take that on as a challenge that would be able to still make it happen. And from a personal standpoint, I mean, I look at this like my wife used to have an attitude that whoever she met, if I didn't like them, she wanted to make sure that she could convince those people to like me. So she did me a big favor that way. I had a lot of friends that actually I didn't care for that much. They thought I was so she was good at what she did. Well, that's kind of the same thing I try to do. I try to go in and be in a more I call it passive aggression.
Mhm.
I'm being aggressive, but they don't know it. They think I'm being nice, you know. And
Mhm.
so when things start happening, it's easy to fall back and say, why do people use just straight out aggression? I don't think it pays off. At the end of the day, things don't get done. People hate you. So I
Yeah.
think you got to look how can I take this project and focus on the challenges that they have and get people to be involved in overcoming them. And once you do that, it's like a state of momentum. Once that momentum starts to pick up, you can't stop it. I mean, you see this in sports all the time. One of the big things they worry about in sports is momentum. And you
Yeah.
can see it change in a basketball game, in a football game. You can see the momentum change. And when it changes, the other team typically wins. So you got to control momentum. And that's what I try to do, is get people moving in that direction, build the momentum, because it just gets faster and faster and faster as you go.
That's awesome. And you said a lot of things in there, like you've mentioned a couple times, like you get to focus on what really matters, or like the specific points or the value you're trying to deliver. Now,
Mhm.
normally in projects, just from a generality's sake, do you think it's fair to say that a lot of times when people are in these meetings and they're just, you know, I was gonna say bullshit. I said they're just bullshitting themselves through these, like, oh, we're doing fine, we're doing great, everything's good. Oh yeah, we'll meet it, we'll pick it up. Like, do we like? I'm trying to figure out what the question I was going to ask is. I apologize. Like, I like the fact that you were talking about when you get into these tough spots, you're able to like clean through everything and really focus on value. Do you think like that resonates to be able to turn the momentum of the people to go like, finally, we can worry about what really, really matters, or what?
I think that's really important, especially in the meeting environment,
Mm-hmm.
where these people have been listening to. As I learned in England, they tell you that the thing you say there is, "Stop blowing smoke up my arse."
Yeah.
And so they've been participating in these meetings, and the smoke is just filling the room with these guys talking about how well off they are and how well they're doing, and all the working people that are sitting in the meeting are going like, "What the hell is he talking about?"
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's important, because once you start to call them out, uh,
Mhm.
let's cut the smoke. When let's get down to the
Yeah.
facts. What the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
Once you do that, then the people in the room are going, hey, we're finally going to get somebody paying some attention to the real problems we have. And you have the same thing with upper management, by the way, because they're so focused on a delivery date, whether it's realistic or not. They really don't
Yeah.
care. They've banked on that date being, that's their key to their bonus, so they don't want to miss
Mm.
that date, and so they won't hear what you're saying. You can tell them
Mm.
right flat out, you're going to be 2 months late. They don't hear it. They don't hear
Yeah.
it. They say, no, we're not, we got to deliver it on that date. Well, that's nice to talk about, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. So you have to look at it from that standpoint. I think that people who can go into and by the way, sometimes we go in there before we even know it's troubled.
Yeah.
One of the things that I look for when I go into, and this is kind of ironic, because
Yeah.
we've been in project management. I've been in 54 years, and you've probably been in longer than I have. And so you
Uh,
look at this, and you say, well, what's the one thing from a timing standpoint I need to really make sure I understand? Well, the answer is your critical path schedule. You've got to know what your time constraints are, and I can't imagine more than one or two that I've encountered that actually had a well-developed critical path. So
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
things start to slip and you panic and everything becomes a damn fire drill, and you find out, well, we didn't really need to do that. We had 2 months float on that particular activity. Well, it's
For
too
sure.
bad. You already burned somebody out now, trying to make up time that you don't need to make up.
That's good. And then like, so I'm sure there's a lot of like executive level, middle level, and upper level people listening to us. And so if you were to go into a company, and these people might say, yeah, I'm sure we have a couple projects that are a little behind, but nothing too bad. What might be some good questions that they could ask either themselves or their project managers, or ways to look at things, or ways to analyze to say, how good are my projects actually? Like, do I have trouble projects brewing and those kind of things? Like, how can they unearth that for
There's
themselves?
really there's really only two issues in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the first one is technical difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How much of this is breakthrough? How much of it requires a find in technology to be successful? So there, your risk elements go up substantially the higher the level of technical complexity. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the first place I'm going to look. The second place I'm going to look is, what's your resource load look like?
Mm.
How many people of what skill sets are you using on this project? And then I'm going to go to another project and ask them the same question. And what I'm going to find is the same damn resources are committed to both projects. Now, you can't tell me
Absolutely.
one of those projects is in trouble. And
Yeah.
now we need to find out which one. So that, to me, those two things are the most critical. Most of the other issues we can recover from, but if you're not getting enough resources, or if you have the wrong resources, you can translate that to time impact. It's not brain surgery, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening in most project environments right now. We don't have we don't have enough of the right resources. So we
True.
manage our projects by body count, not by
Hmm.
skill set count, but by body count. Well, boy, there's a big difference between a body and a person that's well trained in a certain technical area. So
Right.
I don't. I mean, I would be able to pick that up in an hour. I could tell them,
Right.
well, here's your problem, because they've got too many resources assigned that they don't have. And
True.
so when you look at a person, if you're using a PPM system, and
Hmm.
these came along long after I was involved in real projects, but if I was using that, first thing I do is look at a histogram, a resource load histogram,
Yeah.
and you'll immediately see, well, hell, Bob's committed 118% of his time. Where's he working? Well, he's working on, well, that project's in trouble by
Yeah.
definition. Not because he's not good, but he's limited in
Get
his
organized.
capability. So I think those the technical complexity that, I mean, I worked on a big project for the Department of Energy. It was a probably $300 million a year. I wasn't a project manager. I
Right.
wouldn't mislead you there. They had somebody a lot more important than I was. But the fact of the matter was, I was the project management guy. Okay,
Yeah.
and one of the things we found right away is that they were delivering schedules to the Department of Energy that had no relevance in terms of the real project execution at all. And
Yeah.
so they got in a lot of trouble. And this was one of those bids where you're based on your performance. You get a score, and that score defines what your bonus, if you will, is. And they were lying. I mean, well,
Sure.
I won't say the company. They were misrepresenting the truth
There you go.
to the
Yeah.
sponsor, and in hopes of being able to get their payment authorized. And so we found pretty quickly that they were probably, this is a long project, like 8 9 year project. They were already a year and a half behind. It was only 4 years in. And so you can
Yeah.
you can see these things. It's not like brain surgery, and oftentimes you can just talk to some of the worker bees. That's what I used to do when I was managing the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories project management organization. I used to
Yeah.
spend all my time walking around talking to project managers. I didn't do a damn
Mhm.
thing. I just walked around and talked to project managers. And finally, the head of the laboratory cornered me one day and said, "Lee, what do you do all day?" He said, "I've been in your office about 4 or 5 times this week. You're never there." And I said,
Yeah.
"No, I'm not. I'm out getting the truth. I'm out finding out what the real status of our projects are so that we can begin to do things to make them meet the schedules we've committed to." So
Mm.
management by wandering around. A guy named Townsend coined that
Hmm.
phrase when he was with Avis Rental Car. I love it. Management
Yeah.
by wandering around.
I love it. And then you mentioned something about labor allocation where, Bob is going to be applied across here, across here, across here. One of the things, I don't know if this is one of the things you found, is a lot of times when you go into companies and say, hey, look, they bring out a list. They go, we have 112 projects running. And then you look at it and go, that's great. Which ones are providing the most value? Oh, these. And then you find out, you start going to some of the meetings, same people, same faces, same meetings. And I'm like, okay, if everybody's in the meetings all the time, half the day, who's doing the work and when and where are their teams and all these things, like it seems to be the same pattern in big companies everywhere, where it's just like we do projects for the sake of doing projects, or start them, don't finish them, in a sense.
Yeah, you've hit on a sore point. I have a hatred for
Okay.
meetings. I think meetings are probably the biggest waste of time in a project management environment that has ever been available to anybody. Wasting time, call meetings. And when I used to do some recruiting for some jobs, I'd ask people, what do you do all day? And they said, we attend meetings. I said, what do you mean
Yeah.
you attend meetings? That's all we do. We have meetings in the morning, meetings in the afternoon, lunchtime meetings, dinner time meetings. I said, okay, well then, what about the people doing the work? And he said, oh, I'm the doing the work. I said, how the hell you doing it when you're in meetings all day? This is the biggest complaint. When I was teaching, a lot of people, they'd say the biggest complaint they had was they don't have time to do their job. They're
That's very
they're
true.
so busy in meetings they don't have time to do their job. So what I tell them, and people bitch about meetings to me, if they're the project manager, I say, hey, look, you got control of this. It's your project.
Yeah.
You call the meeting. You set the time frame. You identify the attendance sheet, and don't let anybody else come. But it's become a status thing. Well, hey, Lee's having a
Yeah.
meeting. Oh, good. I want to get invited because good to be in Lee's meetings. What do you have to do at the project? Oh, nothing. But I want to sit in there and see if I can. And it just out of control. It's just
Yes.
totally out of control. I told a big client out in California that once, and they fired me. They said, you don't know what you're talking about. These meetings are important, and we never
Oh
get anything
yeah.
done if we didn't have these meetings. I said, no, you'll never get anything done if you do have these meetings. And so they said, well, look, we'll get us another consultant because we don't like what
Yeah.
you're
Someone
saying.
tell us what we want to hear.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. We'll tell them what they want, and then they'll get it right. So I've had that happen
That's
a time or two. I'm pretty candid about this stuff. I mean, as I said, it's not that difficult. It's a lot of common sense. And now I'll tell you, if I were working in the project management world, if I were managing projects right now,
yes.
we wouldn't have any troubled projects. We've got tools and techniques available to us to highlight when the problem's beginning to germinate before it even sprouts. We'll
Yes.
know there's a problem happening, and we can fix it before it takes place. I mean, it's just like
Beautiful.
going down the road and not knowing where you're going. Well, hell, any road will get you there. You got to know where it is you're going, and then decide, is that the right way to go?
That's beautiful. So I'm sure there's some people out there that are saying, well, I like what Lee's saying. I want to get involved in some of these like troubled projects and stuff. And so the good thing is they'll probably start raising their hand or either just getting involved. Hey, I'd love to help. I can do this. Let's take it on. And I'm sure like the fervor and the excitement to do it, they may make a couple mistakes. Like they won't know how to finesse and do these things. Neff, what are some of those mistakes that the neophytes or the new people to this kind of fixing failing projects, doing these things? What kind of mistakes could they make in the beginning?
Well, like I said earlier, they could be, and this happens a lot with these firefighters, they can actually be too aggressive.
Mm,
And when they're so aggressive that they literally turn off the people that are responsible for delivering the work, they're
yeah.
shooting themselves in the foot. So
Yeah.
you've got to go into it with a very positive attitude. You have to be assertive to get decisions made, but you don't have to do it in a way that leaves body count.
Sure.
And so that's what I would suggest first off. Second of all, volunteer to do it. I mean, if you're any good, I mean, if you're not good, don't volunteer because you'll go down in flames. But if you're a good project manager, I mean,
Uh-huh.
what better honor could you have than to step in and save a project that's going to have a big impact on the company? But you better
Sure.
be careful. You better be sure you know what the heck you're doing. And once you do that, once you volunteer for it, then you got to make it happen. I've tried a couple that didn't work out so well because I couldn't get my finesse didn't work. Management wasn't
Yeah.
buying into what we were selling, and so you do have to be sure. You will have to have senior management support. You can't do this without senior level support. So that's where you got to do the finesse. You got to convince them you know what you're doing, you know what actions need to be taken. Let
Mhm.
empower me to do it, and I'll do it. Then
Mm.
then you better pray you do it because that might be the last chance you get.
It's very true because a lot of times this is their baby. They don't want the egg to go on
Yep.
their face. We got to be that finesse thing can't be emphasized enough. I think that you got to go in there and handle it the right way so that it becomes like you become their savior and they become the savior in a sense.
Sure.
Because
You got to remember one thing you've got to remember is that because organizations are not doing any meaningful prioritization of their projects based
yeah,
on value add or return on investment,
mhm.
you're going to run into almost everywhere I went, you're going to run into what I call senior level management's pet project. Uh,
Sure.
it, it's a project that the senior level guy he just decided for some darn reason. I might have been with his girlfriend down at the bar that there was something that he wanted to do that was going to be important. Maybe it's his legacy.
Right.
Maybe and so this project just kind of appeared out of
Mhm.
nowhere. It didn't go through any prioritization exercise. It just all of a sudden appeared. And when somebody said something about it, oh no, that's a CEO's pet project. Don't mess around with that
Mm.
one. And so you start to get into that situation where you, as a project manager, you don't have any leverage.
No.
Because if this CEO's pet projects, and I've run into a couple of these, and they were, I mean, they were very expensive projects, and they added no value to the organization whatsoever. But
Yeah.
there was no way in God's name they were going to kill that project. I can guarantee
Yeah.
you. And so you run into that all the time. And so as a neophyte coming in, thinking that, oh well, they've analyzed all these projects and they're ordered in a prioritization return on investment order. Well, that's interesting to say, and it's in all the books. I've read it. The fact that it is, that ain't the way it happens. And so you can read books till till your eyes get sore, but the fact of the matter is, until you really start to experience it and start to learn this idea, this finesse. So you can, if you don't play bridge, look up bridge. They'll talk about finessing. It's the most powerful tool I ever learned, and I learned it winning money playing cards. So you see where these kind of things really pay a benefit.
That's good. And you said like understanding, like reading all the books, and then I think like the thing you're talking about with this finesse is learning how to read the organization and learning how to read like the political environment and the CEO, the executives, to say, I know where to push and I don't know where to push, and I know where to put my foot in and not, and open my mouth. Because like a
Yeah.
lot of times for guys that do talk a lot and are good at selling and working through stuff, a lot of times, at least I can only speak for me, when I learned to shut up was when I learned to like really take advantage of opportunities, because I could say, let them do the talking. I can find out where the angles are that are going to serve them, and then I can attack those in a very decisive way. And
Sure,
so,
you've got to pick those things that add the most value quickly.
yeah,
Because as soon as you start to get positive feedback, then the reins loosen up. You get more
yeah,
freedom to operate. So I think it's the thing that's sort of tied to finesse. I didn't play poker. I wasn't much of a poker player, but
right,
a good poker player is a good finesse guy. They do it by facial expression. Okay,
right,
and you can't read them. You can't read. You don't know what they got.
yeah,
And I was playing with a lady once. We were playing cards, and she kept winning, and I kept thinking, well, why she? So finally, I said, what the hell? What you're playing this like you're a professional poker player? And she said,
yeah,
I am. She said, that's what I do for a living. And so I learned from her that if you're good at what you do, you can impact others, and that's what I try to do in a positive way. I mean, I can do it either way, but I try to do it in a positive way. I want to be the guy who people say, look, he's straight, honest, he shoots straight, he knows what, he's not going to lie, he's not going to misrepresent the truth. And then all of a sudden you've got followers. One of the things I learned about leadership, I learned this from
yes,
Ken Blanchard, the 1 minute manager, is that
yeah,
one of the things leaders have to have, and it's not debatable, is that they have to have followers. And the
that's true.
followers are the ones that get the job done. So I want to be the leader that when I look behind me, I see armies of followers coming right behind me.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's a good way to end this one, Lee. I think it's awesome. I think if anybody's listening to this and they're in a troubled project, distress project, or they're getting ready to jump in, they're much better prepared at this point to go in there, take a swing at it. Hopefully it's not the last swing, but like go at it the right way and use that finesse and build that follower base, produce something good. So
Good.
yet
I
again, I
think it
appreciate it,
is.
Lee.
I
Go ahead.
think there's more opportunities in this area of repairing troubled projects than in some of the other areas in project management. So it's a good field to get into if you're
Oh
good
yeah.
at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a need, right? And so like they do
Yep.
have different certifications and different specialists that go in there and then just fix projects, fix
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
And it's a way of thinking, I think. Like it's a way of acting, it's a way of thinking. And yeah, those people are highly compensated as well, so it's not a bad deal either.
They are indeed.
So that's great. Well, thank you again, Lee. We will see you next week, and this was a great one. Thank you, sir.
Good. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.